Liam Walker slid onto a leather stool at the far end of the polished mahogany bar, ordered an old-fashioned he couldn't really afford, and tried to look like he belonged in the velvet rope. That's when he saw her. Sarah, Alex's mom. His best friend's elegant, always put-together mother was working behind the bar, her hands moving with a practiced grace as she shook a stainless steel mixer. She was pouring a perfect martini, laughing softly at something a regular said, and for a single, heart-stopping second, their eyes met across the crowded room. The shock was a physical thing, a cold splash of water. This was Alex's mom, the woman who hosted elaborate Thanksgiving dinners and gardened in a sun hat on weekends. Not a bartender. Not here. His mind scrambled, trying to reconcile the two images, and the treacherous thought hit him like a punch to the gut. She was beautiful under the amber glow of the backlit bottles, more beautiful than he'd ever allowed himself to notice. And then the dilemma landed, heavy and immediate. His loyalty to his best friend screamed at him to look away, to pretend he never saw this. But something else, something deeper and more protective, demanded he find out why she was here. Their gaze held for a beat too long. He saw the flicker in her eyes, a flash of pure, unguarded panic, before her professional mask snapped back into place. It was a mask of cool composure, but he'd seen the crack. His own heart was hammering against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of confusion and a forbidden, respectful attraction he'd always quietly squashed. She was Alex's mom. That was the only fact that mattered. And yet, watching her now, he saw Sarah. Not just a parent, but a woman who was clearly carrying a weight he knew nothing about. She finished with her customer and made her way down to his end of the bar, her expression perfectly neutral. "What can I get for you?" she asked, her voice even, though her knuckles were white where she gripped the edge of the counter. "Sarah?" he said, the name coming out as a disbelieving whisper. "Liam," she replied, her tone carefully flat, acknowledging him without acknowledging the strangeness of this. "It's good to see you." The lie hung between them, obvious and awkward. He just stared, his drink forgotten. She was a regular here. He could tell by the way she knew where every bottle was without looking, by the easy way she bantered with the other staff. This wasn't a one-off. This was her job. He couldn't let it go. The image of her behind that bar, that brief glimpse of fear in her eyes, played on a loop in his mind for the next 2 days. So he went back. Not to the busy Friday night shift, but on a quiet Tuesday. He took a booth in a shadowy corner, a book open but unread on the table in front of him. He just watched. He watched her handle a belligerent, tipsy financier with a firm politeness that shut down his advances without ever raising her voice. He saw her carry 3 full trays of intricate cocktails without spilling a drop, her movements efficient and tired. He noted the way her smile, bright and engaging for the customers, would fade the second she turned away, replaced by a profound exhaustion that seemed to settle in her shoulders. The respectful crush he'd always felt warred violently, with a surge of protective concern. This was more than just a woman picking up a side job. This felt like a secret. This felt like survival. He debated confronting her, just walking up and asking if she was okay, if Alex knew, if she needed anything, but the risk felt too high. What if he was wrong? What if he embarrassed her? Or worse, forced her to confess something to her son that would shatter their family? He was trapped between the loyalty he owed his best friend and the powerful, instinctive need to protect this woman he realized he barely knew. So he kept watching, night after night, becoming a ghost at the edge of her world, trying to piece together a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. The tension was a live wire under his skin, and he knew, with a certainty that chilled him, that this couldn't last. Something was going to break. The following Thursday, the air had turned cold, a sharp wind cutting through the thin fabric of Liam's jacket. He told himself he was just making sure she got to her car safely. The parking garage attached to the velvet rope was poorly lit, all concrete pillars and echoing spaces. He hung back near the elevator bank, feeling like a stalker, his conscience screaming at him to leave. But he couldn't. He watched her push through the heavy service door, her shoulders slumped with a weariness she never showed inside. She walked quickly, heels clicking. A had turned cold, a sharp wind cutting through the thin fabric of Liam's jacket. He told himself he was just making sure she got to her car safely. The parking garage attached to the velvet rope was poorly lit, all concrete pillars and echoing spaces. He hung back near the elevator bank, feeling like a stalker, his conscience screaming at him to leave, but he couldn't. He watched her push through the heavy service door, her shoulders slumped with a weariness she never showed inside. She walked quickly, heels clicking a lonely rhythm, and pulled out her phone. He saw her stop, her body tensing as she answered. He was too far to hear the words, but her posture said everything. The defeated slope of her back, the way her free hand came up to press against her forehead. He moved closer, instinctively, drawn by a concern that overrode every rule about privacy. He ducked behind a massive SUV 2 rows over. Her voice, strained and hushed, carried in the cavernous silence. "No, Mark, we can't. Not again. The payment is due Friday. I've covered the last 2, but this one, I don't have it." A long pause. Liam's blood ran cold. "Mark, Alex's dad. You said it was under control. You promised me it was under control." Her voice broke, a raw, quiet sob that she quickly stifled. "They'll take the house, Mark. Do you understand that? They will literally take our home out from under us, and then what do I tell Alex? That his father's poker games are more important than his roof?" The truth landed like a physical blow. It wasn't a side hustle. It wasn't a quirky midlife crisis. It was a desperate, secret sacrifice. She was working these late, exhausting nights to clean up a mess her husband had made, to shield their son from a humiliation and a fear no kid should ever face. The elegant woman who hosted holiday dinners was bartending until 2 a.m. to pay a gambling debt. The respectful crush evaporated, replaced by something far deeper, far more powerful, a profound, aching respect. She wasn't just Alex's mom. She was a fortress, standing alone, taking every hit to protect her family. Liam leaned against the cold metal of the SUV, his own breath shaky. The moral dilemma was no longer about attraction or loyalty. It was about witnessing a quiet act of heroism and knowing he was the only one who saw it. He waited until she ended the call. He heard the soft click, then the sound of her taking a shaky breath. He stepped out from behind the SUV. "Sarah." She spun around, her phone clattering to the concrete. Her face, illuminated by the harsh garage lights, was a mask of pure terror. "Liam." His name was a choked whisper. How long have you been?" "Long enough," he said quietly, his voice softer than he'd intended. He took a step closer, but not too close. He didn't want to crowd her. "I heard. About the house. About Mark." Her composure shattered. The professional bartender, the unflappable mother, vanished. In her place was a woman trembling on the edge of a cliff. "Please," she begged, her voice cracking. "Liam, you can't tell Alex. He can't know this about his father. It would destroy him." "I'm not going to tell Alex," he said, the promise immediate and absolute. "That's not why I'm here." The relief that washed over her was so profound her knees almost buckled. She leaned back against a concrete pillar, pressing the heels of her hands into her eyes. "Then why? Why are you following me? What do you want?" "I want to help." The words were simple, but they hung in the cold air between them, heavy with meaning. She let out a bitter, broken laugh. "Help? How? By buying a few overpriced drinks? You can't help with this, Liam. This is our mess." "I know it's your mess, but you shouldn't have to clean it up alone in a bar every night." He took another step, finally closing the distance. He saw the tears she was desperately trying to hold back. "I have a job, Sarah, in finance. I look at debt structures all day. Let me look at this. Let me see if there's another way." The shame on her face was a physical thing. She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "I'm so embarrassed that you've seen all of this." "Don't be," he said, his voice firm now. "There's nothing to be embarrassed about. You're trying to save your family. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen anyone do." She finally looked up at him, and for the first time, she really saw him. Not as her son's sometimes goofy friend, but as a man standing in a cold garage, offering her a lifeline without judgment. The dynamic between them shifted, irrevocably and completely. The secret admirer was gone. In his place was a confidant, an ally. She gave a slow, hesitant nod. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." That alliance became our new reality, a secret shared in the quiet hours after last call. I'd wait in that same shadowy booth, nursing a soda water until the last customer stumbled out and the staff started wiping down. Then I'd follow her to a small office in the back, the air thick with the smell of spilled liquor and lemon sanitizer. She'd pull a folder from her bag, her movements tired but precise. That alliance became our new reality, a secret shared in the quiet hours after last call. I'd wait in that same shadowy booth, nursing a soda water until the last customer stumbled out and the staff started wiping down. Then I'd follow her to a small office in the back, the air thick with the smell of spilled liquor and lemon sanitizer. She'd pull a folder from her bag, her movements tired but precise, and slide it across the desk. Bank statements, credit card bills, notices from a collection agency that used language designed to frighten. My day job finally had a purpose beyond a paycheck. This wasn't abstract corporate finance, this was someone's home, someone's family. I'd credit card bills, notices from a collection agency that used language designed to frighten. My day job finally had a purpose beyond a paycheck. This wasn't abstract corporate finance. This was someone's home, someone's family. I'd spread the papers out, my analyst's mind clicking into gear, tracing the patterns of debt, the punishing interest rates, the terrifying timeline. She'd watch me, her arms crossed, a quiet intensity in her eyes. I found a clause, mind clicking into gear, tracing the patterns of debt, the punishing interest rates, the terrifying timeline. She'd watch me, her arms crossed, a quiet intensity in her eyes. I found a clause, buried in the fine print of a second mortgage that the lender had improperly applied. I drafted a negotiation letter using the cold, formal language of the industry she couldn't access. We practiced what she would say on the phone, her voice gaining strength with each rehearsal. Our meetings became a strange, intimate that the lender had improperly applied. I drafted a negotiation letter using the cold, formal language of the industry she couldn't access. We practiced what she would say on the phone, her voice gaining strength with each rehearsal. Our meetings became a strange, intimate ritual. We weren't bartender and customer, or best friend's mom and kid. We were co-conspirators in a financial heist, trying to put her family back together. The bond that grew in that cramped office wasn't built on that old, quiet crush. It was built on shared focus, on the mutual respect of two people working a difficult problem from different angles. She started to see the man I was becoming, not the boy I had been, and I saw the formidable intelligence she'd always hidden behind a warm, maternal smile. She was a strategist, a negotiator, a fighter. I was just giving her the right weapons. I walked into the Velvet Rope on a Thursday night, but I didn't take my usual booth. I went straight to the bar, a folded envelope in my hand. Sarah was polishing a glass, her movements automatic, the tiredness in her eyes a permanent resident now. She looked up, and I saw the question there before I even spoke. I just slid the envelope across the polished wood. Her hands were slightly damp as she opened it, her eyes scanning the single page inside. It was a letter from the creditor, a formal agreement, a restructured payment plan with a frozen interest rate and a timeline that didn't require working until 2 a.m., 7 days a week. The glass she was holding slipped from her fingers, landing on the rubber mat with a soft thud. She didn't even notice. She just stared at the paper, her breath catching in her throat. "How?" was the only word she could manage, her voice barely a whisper in the noisy room. I explained it quietly, leaning close so only she could hear. The clause, the negotiation, the threat of regulatory action if they didn't comply. The financial weight she'd been carrying alone for months, the invisible anchor dragging her down, simply lifted. I watched it happen in real time. The tension in her shoulders unlocked. The permanent crease of worry between her eyebrows softened. She didn't cry. She just placed her palms flat on the bar, her head bowing for a moment as if in silent prayer. When she looked up, her eyes were clear. The relief was so profound it changed the air around her. That weekend, Mark finally told her everything. The full extent of the debt, the shame that had kept him silent, the desperation that had made it worse. It wasn't a happy conversation, but it was an honest one. He committed to counseling, to transparency, to rebuilding what he'd broken. And the following Friday, Sarah worked her last shift. She served her final overpriced cocktail, wiped down the bar for the last time, and walked out into the night air a free woman. Our final conversation happened on her front porch, the smell of her garden all around us. The house was safe, her family was intact. She looked at me, and the gratitude in her eyes was a physical warmth. "I don't know how to thank you, Liam. You saw me when no one else did. You saw the fight, not the failure." I just shook my head. "You were always saving them, Sarah. I just handed you a different tool." She reached out then, Not to hug me, but to place her hand gently on my arm. A simple, profound gesture that acknowledged everything we'd been through, and everything that could never be. Thank you, she said again, and this time it wasn't about the money or the house. It was for seeing her, for respecting her enough to help without pity, for becoming her ally instead of her savior. I drove home that night under a clear sky, the windows down. The crush was gone, completely. What remained was something deeper and far more lasting. The bone deep knowledge that real connection isn't about attraction or grand gestures, it's about showing up in the quiet, desperate moments for someone else's battle and fighting alongside them because it's the right thing to do. It's about the profound respect you earn when you see someone's strength instead of their struggle. I saw Sarah, not Alex's mom, not the bartender, just Sarah. And in helping her find her way back, I found a better version of myself. So, what would you have done? Would you have told your best friend his family was falling apart? Or would you have become the secret keeper, the quiet ally, and helped put the pieces back together? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.